Good evening, everybody. I'm your host, Jack Remington of the Jack Remington Political Analyst channel. Today's video, article from Politico. San Francisco federal judge again blocks Trump from stripping immigrant protections for Venezuelans and Haitians. Subheading reads, the administration's revocation of temporary protected status violated federal law, the judge ruled. Immigrant rights supporters rallied in March outside of San Francisco federal court that ruled Friday against the Trump administration's bid to roll back deportation protections for Venezuelans and Haitians. A federal judge has barred the Trump administration from revoking the temporary legal status for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan and Haitian immigrants, calling the administration's bid to cast them out of the country unlawful and based on false rationales. U.S. District Judge Edward Chen ruled that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's move to terminate the temporary protected status afforded by the Biden administration was preordained without any meaningful analysis and review. The ruling is the latest episode in litigation that has ping-ponged through the federal courts for months. In an earlier phase of the case, the Supreme Court permitted one of Noem's decisions on the subject to stand while the litigation proceeded in the lower courts. That emergency order from the justices lifted the previous block that Chen had imposed on the TPS revocations. Chen, an Obama appointee based in San Francisco, said his new ruling did not conflict with the Supreme Court's prior order because at that point the case was in a preliminary posture and the justice's decision applied only to a temporary block he had issued. The High Court, he wrote, did prevent him from fully considering the merits of the case and rendering a final judgment on the challenger's argument that Noem's policy change violated the federal law that governs agency decision-making. Acknowledging the certain appeal from the Trump administration, Chen made his ruling effective immediately, citing the, quote, significant rights of Venezuelan and Haitian TPS holders who have lost or will lose status in the absence of relief, end of quote. Wow. TPS is a form of legal status under federal immigration law that allows immigrants from countries facing humanitarian crises to remain in the U.S. and work legally. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson expressed confidence that the ruling would be overturned. Quote, for decades, the TPS program has been abused, exploited, and politicized as a de facto amnesty program, the spokesperson said in a statement. While this order delays justice, Secretary Noem will use every legal option at the department's disposal to end its chaos and prioritize the safety of Americans. Unelected activist judges cannot stop the will of the American people for a safe and secure homeland, end of quote. While the Trump administration officials have complained that the Biden administration admitted many immigrants without conducting thorough background checks, at least some of those eligible for TPS arrived during President Trump's first term and were granted similar protection by him shortly before he left office. I'm not so sure about that. That's getting worded wrong and taken out of context. The ruling from Chen comes from amid a legal debate in circles of whether some judges are deliberately ignoring or bucking Supreme Court rulings. Duh! Last month, Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh signed an opinion decrying such defiance. But some lower court judges have argued that the high courts typically terse decisions in emergency cases leave significant uncertainty about how to apply those rulings. Boy, they really care about the immigrants, don't they? Oh, illegal immigrants and every other immigrant, legal or not. The Supreme Courts may order effectively nullifying Chen's earlier ruling and allowing the administration to proceed to wind down TPS for Venezuelans to contain no explanation of the justice's rationale, but suggested those with work permits or similar paperwork marked as being valid to next month might have better claims. Wow. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was the only member of the court to note dissent from that order. Really? As if we didn't know that was coming? Does she know what a woman is? What does she think about this Sydney Sweeney stuff? Haven't heard a word about that, have we? Chen's ruling is the latest step back for Trump's mass deportation agenda, following a series of lower court rulings that have similarly blocked his effort to quickly deport groups once granted protection by the Biden administration. The Supreme Court has, in some instances, interceded to permit the Trump administration's policies to remain in effect, but broader litigation on all of them remains ongoing. Okay, where do we begin? Let's see. In the second paragraph, U.S. District Judge Edward Chen ruled that the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's move to terminate the, quote, temporary protected status, end quote, afforded by the Biden administration was, quote, preordained without any meaningful analysis and review, end of quote. Well, how much meaningful analysis and review did they get when the Biden administration allowed them to get here like that and continue this TPS program? Huh? They all can't say, well, we can't make it in our home country. We need to come to America. We can't take in 8 billion people. And we're $37 trillion in debt. And Trump's trying to fix all that. Okay. I want these clowns out of here. Okay. And it makes it sound like that they're all working, that they're allowed to work. Very few of these people are working. Very few of them. So let's go through the article a little bit more. Chen is the Obama appointee, basis for San Francisco. That's not good. Wow. I like what the spokesperson said about the TPS program being abused, exploited, and politicized de facto amnesty program. I think that's 100% accurate. But Politico can't even put the person's name in here for the spokesman. So that's Politico for you. And they got a Pulitzer Prize years ago. And they're anti-Republican, they're anti-American, and they're anti-Trump. So be careful with Politico. The ruling from Chen comes amid a debate in legal circles about whether some judges are deliberately ignoring or bucking Supreme Court rulings. Well, what do you think? I think that's what they're doing. See, it's another setback for Trump, but the American people didn't vote for these judges to just run the country. And I'm going to have to make up a follow-up video on this. I'm curious how many judges, how many orders if Trump has been overturned or stopped or temporarily stayed or whatever you want to call it. Okay, all these legal maneuvers, okay? And, compare it to Obama, compare it to Joe Biden, compare it to W. Bush, compare it to Bill Clinton. I would love to see how this is going about. My impression is that Donald Trump is getting hammered literally 5 times more than all the other presidents combined. That's my take. That's my initial impression. So now I got some homework to do. Now that I put myself out there. And then I'm going to make a follow-up video about what's happening in my county, Ventura County. And we got these clowns just they're posturing and saying all this stuff. The sheriff's not protecting the people and not protecting the protesters. Well, the protesters were throwing stuff at the ICE agents and cops. So how much protection do you think they really should have gotten? I mean, I can't say on this YouTube channel what I really think should happen to these protesters. And by the way, the LA protesters that were throwing rocks off the overpass at the cops down below to hit the cop in the face with a rock. He's got 19 fractured bones in his orbital sinus cavity here. Broke his nose. The judge let him off. Probation before judgment. I mean, I was stunned to hear that. But I shouldn't be shocked. This is California. They love the illegals. And I found something on Twitter, or X, formerly called Twitter, I found on today, that Gavin Newsom was beating J.D. Vance by at least 8 points in some kind of mock-up poll. For those of you who don't understand that Gavin Newsom wants to run for president. He wanted to run a couple years ago. And they had to make a backdoor deal to keep him from making a lot of noise. They had to put Kamala Harris in there because 90% of the Democrat Party is black female voters. And they had to put this black woman, this Kamala Harris, in there, and they made Gavin Newsom eat crow. They made a deal with him. Shut up now. She might win. If she doesn't, we'll put you in there in 2028. That's the deal that they made. They all make deals. Both sides. All sides. Independent. You name it. Republicans, all of them. Reagan did it too. They all make. Bob Dole, they make deals. Hey, if I can get in here, they're allowed to do that, folks. This part I'm talking about, it's not illegal. The DNC and the GOP, the people that run those committees, that run those two major parties in America, they're allowed to make the deals like that. Now, they're not allowed to say, I'm going to bribe you $2 million or $1 billion if you do that. If it's got finances involved, that's a bribe, that's grift, that's graft, that's everything else. They could go to jail for that, even though they wouldn't go to jail. They get the slap on the wrist like Hillary Clinton. They're allowed to do that, folks. Politics is about deal breaking and deal making and everything else. They lie. They just do.
We have to save this nation. That is what's important.
But he's a liar. Unless you say that you're a child molester, he's a liar. Do you want a liar for the presidency?
Tell me a politician who doesn't tell lies.
Abraham Lincoln. I don't know.
And I'll get to that in a later video. So, always great to be an American. God bless America. Go Donald Trump. I voted for you 3 times, Trump. Get him. The best president in American history. He lives rent-free in every liberal's head. And I love it. Thank you. Stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.